Hi everyone, this is Yonal versus Nick, played on the 23rd of February. Let's get into it. Okay, so we've got, whoa, what's going on here? Some sort of Slav defense, semi-Slav, and knight a6, what? Let me just go back to the move order a little bit. I mean, you're kind of giving your opponent the center here. Playing c6 now is, you're transposing him to Slav. I think you're better off just to limit your opponent's options, just playing c6 on move 1, so that after they play c4, you go d5, and you end up in the same thing anyway. It ends up being the same position. You just don't give your opponent as many options. By playing knight f6 on move 1, your opponent might just avoid your whole Slav thing. And after this, I don't know, moves like d5 might be possible. I don't know, is this opening book? It looks like in the opening book, players as white just transpose straight into the main lines anyway. But I don't know, you're giving your opponent an extra option. I don't know if that's any good or not. But you have to be prepared for extra lines. Whereas if you just play c6, d5 straight away, your opponent doesn't have as many choices. I hope you follow me when I say that. Okay, that's just a little move order thing. So, yeah, I mean, even here, I'm not sure of e3. I mean, it's a perfectly fine move. I just prefer to get this bishop out first, f4 or g5 before closing up the pawn structure, but it should be okay. This bishop just gets a bit trapped in, that's all. E6 is fine. It's usually too scary for black to try and develop this bishop outside the pawn chain, because you introduce ideas like queen b3, putting pressure on d5 and the b7 pawn. So playing e6 is fine. So your knight a6, this is the first move that made me go, whoa, what? Why is the knight developing out there? If we look at the openings book very quickly, your knight bd7 is the main move. The knight actually sits here. And from there, it's a far more flexible spot, because if this knight jumps into the center, this knight can follow it in. And this knight on d7 covers e5 and c5, allowing potential e5 and c5 breaks later on in the game. From a6, it's hard to see what that knight is doing. I mean, I don't think it's going to go to c7. If it does, it generally tends to interfere with the best place of this bishop. This bishop wants to go to d6, and if it gets chased, it wants to be able to run back along this diagonal. The knight sitting here doesn't do anything. It's just a very poorly placed piece, I think. Okay, so, and it does introduce ideas like white taking and then taking the knight, doubling your pawns, giving you doubled isolated a pawns at some point as well. So just not a very well placed knight. Knight bd7, I think, is the place to be. Or yeah, that's the main move anyway in this position. Then you can start looking at things like bishop d6 castling. Bishop d2, bishop e7. This is fine. I'm not sure if this bishop wants to go to d2. I mean, the engine likes it. I don't know. I just would have thought developing this kingside bishop would be sensible here. Just get your kingside developed and castle as quickly as you can. C takes, C takes. Not sure if this swap off is. I mean, yeah. I mean, this allows you to trade knights. It also begs the question: why play bishop d2 in the first place? Why not just make this trade straight away and then do it? Why give your opponent one whole extra move to get out of the doubled pawn situation? By playing bishop d2, your opponent might be able to, maybe get their knight out of danger first, eliminating this possibility. So yeah, bishop d2 is a bit strange to me. Okay, so bishop e7, c takes, c takes. Yeah, this is really good. I like what Yonal's doing here. He just doubled isolated pawns and for black. And white's got a pretty comfortable position, I think. Castles, castles, it's good. Knight jumped into e5. It's at this point in the game where you really want to work out what your plan is going to be. I mean, it can't be bad to just throw your knight in the middle like this, but make sure you have a plan behind it first. I mean, if you're chucking the knight in the middle because you're planning to go f4, f5 and have this sort of attack, fair enough. But with your light squared bishop gone, this attack doesn't make much sense anymore. There's just too much covering f5. I'm not sure if this knight moves what I'd want to do. I'd be wanting to sort out this bishop for one. I wouldn't be very happy with this bishop sitting here. blocked in by its own pawns. And I'd be either hatching a plan that involves e4, in which case I guess knight e5 is okay because you can go f3 e4 and try and build a big center that way. Or you could try and do something on the queen side. There's an open c file, so trying to get your rook onto the c file and it might be a good idea. Or maybe maneuvering this knight away so this bishop can sit on c3. I know it's not that good on c3, but at least it blocks black from owning the c file. Okay, bishop d7, queen e2. I mean, it's connecting the rooks up, but yeah, I'm a bit worried about like this idea of the bishop coming here and skewering the queen to the rook at some point. It's not a problem while this knight's here, but black has the option of playing bishop b4 and threatening to chop this knight with that skewer. It's a bit scary putting the queen there. Instead, I'd be thinking, well, how do we play this? Maybe the queen wants to be on f3. You got to be very careful. This knight might actually get trapped. You know, a move like f6 getting played at some point. Whoops, getting played at some point could be a problem. But this bishop has to first move out of the range of the knight. I don't know. Maybe queen f3 is an idea, or maybe just going straight out f3 and trying to get e4 in as quickly as possible is the way to go. Queen e2 looks a bit dodgy, putting your queen and rook on the same line. Maybe you've got enough time to get this rook out of danger, and then the queen can, yeah, jump to e1 or something. I don't know. It looks okay at the moment. So queen c8. Why? The queen had a pretty nice diagonal out here. You know, jumping, maybe to b6 to harass this pawn, or a5, or it could be quite active. I'm not sure why it wants to go to c8. Rook b8 also comes to mind as well. But the main idea is this pawn is en prise, and black is trying to find a way to defend it. But putting the queen on c8 on the only open file on the board just seems very dangerous. This rook wants to get off this diagonal anyway. So rook here, putting on the same line as the queen, is very annoying for black to deal with. I think queen b6, that defends the pawn and introduces the idea of trying to grab this pawn here. You should be happy to swap one of your doubled isolated a pawns for this b pawn. Absolutely. And also introduces ideas like bishop b5, so that if white takes, you get to undouble your pawns. Queen c8, yeah, that looks like it's getting into trouble. Rook ac1, why this rook? Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to what your plan is as to which rook moves to c1, I guess. Maybe the rook wants to be on e1 so that you can go for a central break. With the queen sitting on e2, though, that kind of stuffs up that whole plan. The queen's just in the way here. I really would think putting the rook on f1 to c1 instead. So that eliminates this potential tactic somewhere down the line. And this rook can hop behind the b pawn if it wants to keep this defended. And maybe this bishop might even drop back here just to get out of the way of the queen, so the queen defends along the second rank. And putting the bishop there is not bad at all, because you can look at things like f3, e4, and then the bishop jumps out along this diagonal here, where it can maybe jump into g3 and support that knight on e4. You can't really do that sort of thing with the rook still on f1, because you're just blocking your own rook in and making this tactic all the more scary. Okay, so rook ac1, queen b7. Okay, getting the queen off the line. That's fair enough. I think the queen was better placed b6, because you could have gone there in one move rather than two, but it's not too bad. Rook c2, so it looks like white is looking to double. There's only one open file on the board, so that's actually a good plan. Rook ac8, rook ac8. I'm actually looking at rook fc8 instead. You look at it from black's point of view. He's got the open c file he wants to play down, and he's got the half open b file as well. So putting one rook on the open c file and one rook on the half open b file just seems like the best arrangement of the rooks. I'm wondering where this rook is going after this rook sits here. What's the plan for this rook? I mean, I guess it's possible to move this knight and play f6, e5. Is black really trying to do that? Okay, let's just move forward. Rook fc, okay, doubling, very good. bishop b5, as I was talking about before, trying to, get rid of this trying to get rid of your double pawn. So the knight takes, the pawn takes back, you undouble your pawns. You could have done that. You could have forced it off last move rather than putting a rook on the c file. You could have done this anyway, but the problem in that situation is then white will own the c file. So I can understand why he wants to control the file first. So bishop b5. So here, white probably should just take it, maybe, or I don't know if queen f3 is a possibility. Queen d1 maybe, to give extra defense to this rook. Once this knight moves, this c file is going to be hotly contested by all the major pieces. Getting a queen in a position where it can help control the c file seems good. Queen f3 also seems quite decent as well. You can maybe look to swing the queen to g3 or something and put pressure on this g pawn, particularly if you're looking to play e4 and throw your bishop on h6. Maybe accompanied with f3 and e4 after the queen has gone to g3. Bit of danger there. It's very hard to keep this e4 square defended enough times because you've got the queen, pawn, the knight all guarding it. But yeah, what was played was knight d3, just running straight into this pin. And this is black's bad bishop. He actually wants to trade it off for a knight. It's actually a really nice bishop at the moment. You might want to wait for white to play a4 before you trade it. But running into this pin like this is very, very uncomfortable for white because this queen now is tied down to the defense of the knight. The queen can't go off on some adventure on the king side, and it can't jump back here and help with the pile up that's going on the c file. So it kind of ties the queen to this square here, and the knight can't move, and it's quite frustrating. Self-pinning is rarely a good idea in chess. The other option, and the engine likes this, is just taking this knight straight away. And yeah, I'm just looking at the engine analysis if you're wondering why I just paused for a second. If he takes it back, apparently this leads to a point worth of material for white. And yeah, because at the end of it all, the b5 pawn gets taken. So after taking back, black has to throw the in-between move in and has to take this here. And after you take back, then he can take back like this. And there you can't deflect the queen anymore to win this pawn. But this position's looking pretty nice for white, if you ask me. He's got the c file. It's just the problem, this queen can't get in behind the rook. If it could get to here, that'd be fantastic. Probably still level. Probably still drawn though, even though white has the advantage. So taking was probably good. Knight d3, do not like it at all. So knight e4 was played now. And yeah, I'm wondering about this move. What should black's plan be? That's the real question here. The c file, the c file is crucial. Once this knight moves, white's going to basically say, I'm going to own the c file. Playing this knight here, I mean, it looks like a bit of hope chess going on. You're hoping that white will take the knight, and then after he takes back, this knight will be attacked by a pawn, and the knight's pinned, so he just wins a piece with the pin pylon. So I can see the tactical idea behind it, but maybe it's helping white. Maybe white can just play f3, a move he wants to play anyway, and chase this knight away. And once the knight moves, then e4 is not far off being played, and white's going to get a big center. But what does black do is the question. Maybe try and maneuver a knight to this square here, c4. The knight would be well placed there. Something like knight d7 to b6 to c4, that sort of plan. Okay. I mean, knight e4 is not a blunder or anything. I'm just wondering what the plan is. So f3 was played. I think that was good. So black's decided to take the bishop. Yeah, I mean, maybe taking the knight's better. Like if you take the knight, for instance, and he takes back with, if he tries to take back with the pawn, you've got moves like bishop a3, which is very annoying, hitting the rook, and he's never going to be able to get his c4 advance in. So taking the knight means he has to take back with a piece of some sort. Taking back with the bishop seems to be the most sensible thing to do, but The bishop's not a very strong piece. Taking back with the rook maybe is a possibility. Introduces ideas like bishop b4. I don't know if that's any good. No, he can trade. He can trade rooks, of course. A5 is what the engine suggests, and I kind of like this idea, A5, because that actually defends the b pawn. So after bishop here, there are no tactics like rook here or something to worry about. Interesting, a lot of interesting choices. It's very hard to find a good plan in these positions a lot of the time. So black took the bishop and then threw the bishop b4 in, another pin. Slight problem with that move, it gives your opponent a free piece. This is just a catastrophic blunder. Just thank you, free piece, just like that. So this is just, yeah, I don't know what to think about that. Maybe he thought it was possible because a second ago the queen was here and the knight was getting pinned to the queen. But yeah, this is not possible. That's just a free piece. Well, and Yonal missed it. White missed the free piece. He just takes this. He's just a piece up with what should be a fairly easy win after that. Instead, he just played a3 and chased the bishop away and gave black the opportunity to save his piece, which he did. He took the knight here. Should he take the knight? Is the question. And maybe just retreat back to d3. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what happened. It looks okay to me. Takes. So yeah, that's incredible play. This is 1 hour chess. Black just puts his piece in a position where he can get taken for free, and white missed it. Oh, okay, takes, and yeah, now here you really want to take with the rook, and because you've got the doubled rooks on the open file, it's probably going to I don't know. It looks interesting because if he takes, you take back with the rook still owning the open file, and yeah. If black tries to challenge a rook with something like rook c8, then you might be able to use this square, and basically in this position, this knight is just incredible. It can't be challenged except without giving up material. What can he do? He has to throw away this. He has to give this away. It's the only option, and then maybe try and I'm just thinking if you do this, he can grab this pawn here, can't he? You have to take with the rook. And then after, rook c8, it looks like everything's going to get swapped off. It looks like a fairly drawn position. But he didn't take with the rook. He took with a b pawn, and that looks like a really massive positional blunder, because now you've got this giant gaping hole on c4, and this bishop and this rook will just love to use it, and you've got yourself a backward pawn. It looks like it's going to be very difficult for white to ever push this pawn and get rid of his weakness. Now black has a clear-cut plan of just doubling, tripling even on this pawn. Rook here, get the rook there, and then grab the queen onto c8. Just triple everything on that pawn, and white's going to have great difficulty defending it, especially when you can see there's moves like bishop a4 kicking away one of the defenders. So yeah, this is looking very strong for black now after b takes c3. White threw his bishop straight in. I don't think that's the way to play this. Maybe, one of the biggest problems with the whole plan of harassing this backward pawn is that this knight can just jump into c5 and just block the whole lineup. So maybe the idea is this: just take the knight, get rid of it, and then throw the rook into c4, and that's it. This backward pawn is stuck here. The only problem with this plan is it's hard to see how you're going to win material. Maybe this a pawn is going to be one though, because you pile enormous amount of pressure on this file. And the queen, rather than attacking from behind, might be able to infiltrate in here or jump into here and here and attack the pawn and attack the a pawn at the same time. And it's hard to see how white's going to keep it all defended. So after this huge blunder of b takes, the move does seem to be just rip off the knight straight away. Just get rid of that knight, then throw your rook in there so he can't play c4, and then that's it. That outpost is yours. And this backward pawn is a constant problem. And the only way white can really try and get out of this is by coming down the b file, but it's very hard to see how white's going to be able to do that. Maybe he can play queen here and rook across and try and own the b file. But the moment he tries to open the b file, the c pawn falls. So yeah, here taking the knight is good. Instead he played bishop c4, which allows the knight a chance to to jump into c5 and just completely block that line, so the backward pawn is no longer an issue. And these doubled isolated a pawns cancel out for this isolated a pawn, and the position looks fairly equal. Okay, so rook b2 was played now, hitting the queen. So yeah, so white's looking to maybe block this file up and then own the b file instead, hopefully. So rook b2, queen went to c7. I think that's pretty good because it's aiming for the a5 square where it can pressurize this and this. Now that I went to b4. Why is it going to b4? c5 is clearly the place for it. Just block that line up and then double on the b file and then start infiltrating. Try and infiltrate down to here if you can. Your opponent won't let you, but you double and you try and find a way to triple on that file, and then you can infiltrate, and it's all good for white. Well, let's just say black is the one defending anyway. But he played knight b4, which gives black an opportunity to maybe get some pressure going on this backward pawn. It's hard because the queen is in the way of the rook. It's difficult. Maybe something like a4, a5, sorry. Force the knight back here and then take it, and then after takes, you might be able to throw your queen into the hole, something like that. Unfortunately, yeah, you really want the rook in the hole. You want to keep your queen, and with this pawn sitting here now on a5, you can't play queen a5 and pressurize both these pawns anymore. So yeah, the position is different. Yeah, queen d6 is the engine suggestion, and it's actually pretty good. And that way the rook is along this file. You might be able to play rook c7 double, then move the bishop back and then try and put pressure on here. Okay, so what was played was rook b8. Just trying to challenge on the b file. Rook b1. What? Why not? Why not this rook here? Like, is that really bad? Just doubling? I don't understand why you got this open file and you put your rook in a position where it's not doubled. I mean, he obviously wanted the rook defended, but the biggest problem for white is he can't make any progress unless he gains full total control of the b file and he can infiltrate down, or if he can somehow remove this bishop and get c4 in to get rid of his backward pawn. There's just no progress to be made. So after this, it's sort of throwing away any chance of a win. Both players are just going to maneuver around now. I don't see how either player can make any progress. So a5 was played kicking the knight. The knight went back to c2. White's got himself into a bit of a pickle here, a bit of a tricky position to try and deal with. I'm just quickly looking at the engine suggestions. Yeah, queen c6 is a really great idea. Queen c6, it stops e4 by white, and the queen can also eye this a4 square, where it might be able to help support the b3 square, allowing maybe a bishop or a rook to jump into b3. I like that idea. The other engine suggestion is, there's actually a few engine suggestions. a4, with the idea of cementing that hole and chucking the knight bishop there. You don't have to worry about the fact that you're creating a hole on b4 because you've got the second double pawn to kick knights out of b4. So a4 also makes sense. It just means the queen is never going to be able to infiltrate via there. However, once this bishop jumps into b3, then this backward pawn starts to become a problem once again. So there's a couple of pretty good suggestions. Rook b1 was played. Rook takes b1, and after rook takes, the bishop ran into a2. Surely just challenging on the b file. Rook b8. Just challenge all this. It'll probably end up with some mass swap off like this and the queen back here. But black's got all the advantage because he gets the b file first. He can infiltrate first, and this puts white under a lot of pressure, enormous amount of pressure. The only problem is with the rooks off the board, there's no way to actually put extra pressure on these pawns. This queen can just sit on c1, and the knight can just get out of the way of them, and it's hard for black to make any progress here. probably drawn. If he doesn't take, if he plays something like Queen C1 and defends it, then yeah, this pawn here is starting to look a bit dodgy. It's starting to look a bit hard to defend this. You know, a move like bishop here maybe, although he can unpin by taking, but that does give black the b file. So yeah. Okay, what was happened? Bishop a2. Okay, so rook b2 was played, and then queen c4. Does that lose a piece? You just chopped away the escape square of the bishop. Can't you just move the knight somewhere and that's it? The bishop's doomed. Okay, if it goes to e1, the bishop will still have the b3 square and can just scramble out. But if you go to a1, it takes away the escape square and that's it. White's just won a piece. Just game over. GG. That bishop's gone. There's no way to save it. Yeah, queen c4 is a massive blunder. And knight a1 just wins a piece. And well done to white. Well done, Yonal. He found it. He found it, knight a1. Visually, it's a hard move to find because usually throwing a knight in the corner of the board is one of the worst things you can do with your knight. In this position, it's just great. So black played rook c8, and then white just took the free piece. Yeah, and then black at least got a pawn in compensation for it. Here, white should just start trading pieces. Just take the thing. Just take it, play king f2, and white's just a piece up. He just has to slowly unravel his position, get this knight out of the corner, get it to a decent spot. It might take a while to get there. Or maybe the king can run across to d2 to evict the rook, and once it does, the knight can do something like here to here to here, and then to c5, and it's looking really good for white. He didn't swap queens though. You should swap queens, absolutely should swap queens. Instead he went rook c2. And you can see the logic behind it. You want him to move his queen so that you can grab the rook behind and gain and get, you know, back row mate at the end. Slight problem though. Queen takes a1. You just threw your piece straight back away. So white just won a piece and then just gave it straight back again with this rook c2 idea, sort of a cheap checkmate idea. Hoping the queen takes the queen so you can go mate. You know, that sort of thing. Okay, so queen a1. White's just blundered his piece straight back again. King f2 was played. It's pretty much force. And now black's just winning, isn't he? He can just trade rooks, which he did. And now he just has to avoid the back row mate. And strangely enough, well not strangely enough, but in a cool way, he can just grab this pawn. Because the queen then guards f8. So this queen check is answered by queen f8. After queen here, though, he's going to lose one of these pawns, but that's okay. He's still got a one position. He just has to create an escape square for his king, something like g6 or something. The king can then escape. White will grab one of these pawns, probably the most advanced of the two. Then black can do something like this, defending his remaining pawn, and then slowly work his pawn and queen up the board by going queen here, and then, you know, pawn up, queen up, queen up, etc. And there's not much white can do about it. If the queen swap off, this king just runs straight into the middle of the board. He's got to be careful how he does it, actually. The king, yeah, there's no entry square for the black king. I'm just looking at that now. He's got no way in, and he can't even get in this way if this king is sitting over here blocking the extra pawn. So black is going to have to make some room. Something like f6, e5. White's still blocking it all off. Yeah, maybe instead of g6. Sometimes you got to make these decisions well before pushing your kingside pawns. Maybe g5 is better than g6, because then you're also introducing the idea of things like you know, g4 or h5 g4, and just trying to swap some pawns off to create a path for your king. Because what's going to happen is eventually these queens are going to swap off. This king is going to run over here to stop this pawn, and your king isn't going to be able to get in because of the blocked up pawn structure. This king is just going to simply sit there blockading the pawn and blockading the black king from getting in at the same time, and you'll end up with a draw. So by playing g5 and trying to swap some pawns off over here, you've you know, your king can run in through some entry square via here instead. Okay, so let's see what happens. So g6 was played, unfortunately missing the cool queen a3. And now, even though black is a pawn up, they are doubled isolated pawns. So it's going to be very hard for black to win this. It's probably a drawn position. It's still, I mean, yeah, the only side that can win is black. Let's see what happened. Queen c8 check was played. King g7. I'm liking black's position now. Now, yeah, that check, I don't think it actually helped white. Now there's just a simple threat of queen here check and then grabbing the pawn, or just grabbing the pawn directly. Instead of throwing that check in, white probably should be looking at setting up some sort of fortress. Maybe queen d3 or queen b3 or something. Queen b3 appeals to me. The queen sitting on b3 defends a3 and e3, and the king can pop out here and maybe defend these pawns over here and just sit there and say, come get me. And there's not much black can do about it. If his queen runs away from attacking this pawn, this queen might be able to run in and grab these guys. In fact, there's a bit of a problem here that white-black has to deal with. If his queen does end up maneuvering around somewhere, this queen can come in here and grab this pawn and keep this pawn defended at the same time. So black does have to be a bit cautious. Okay, so queen c8, this actually helped. So yeah, the queen ended up having to run back. Maybe the queen, where does the queen run? Queen has to defend this. So something like queen c5 is needed. But there is a massive problem in that after queen b2, king g3, this queen can like get in behind these pawns. Something like queen e2 or queen d2. Queen d2 is a bit better because it defends the a pawn and threatens the e pawn at the same time. And moves like e4, you've got to be very careful because you're actually opening up more lines to the king. In fact, the engine is suggesting things like g5 here, which introduces mating threat ideas. The idea is to go queen here, check, and if the king goes to h3, you get an instant mate on this square here, or g4. So now white's got problems he has to deal with. His king's going to get kicked all the way into this little corner. Okay, but he didn't play queen c5, which I think was best. He played queen c2, and that just lets this queen take this pawn. And now black's just got a very easy win. He just has to, play queen here and just maneuver his queen and pawn up the board at the same time. And there's nothing black can do about it. So black threw queen c7 in. So black's counter plan seems to involve some sort of perpetual check idea. He's trying to just keep checking this king on these dark squares, and something like check, 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 check. So all black has to do here is make sure he's covering the crucial checks to make sure that there is no perpetual check. And queen b2 check, that's good. I like that because it takes away the b8 square from the queen, so there's no perpetual check anymore. That's very good. Then you can start marching this pawn up the board. And honestly, it does this look like an easy win for black from here. So king g3 was played, and then he played h5. h5? No, just a4. There we go. We're about to go a3, a2, a1. There's not much that can be done to stop this. There's no perpetual check anymore because the queen on b2 covers b8. This is an easy win for black. White's going to have to try and create ideas with stuff like h4 maybe, h5, h6, that sort of thing, and try and plant some pawns on these dark squares so he can get his queen in there and set up some sort of perpetual check. So after h5, it's probably helping white quite a bit. It gives white a whole extra free move. White can now take this pawn, and suddenly it's a lot harder to win. It still should be one for black, but it's just a little bit harder now. Something like queen b6 is the sort of thing that needs to be played. So queen e5 check was played. Trying to set up that perpetual check. All white has to do is play king g8, get it back on this line here, and there's no checks anymore, and this pawn's just going to run through. White has to rearrange his position with something like king h3, so we can go g4 and try and rip this open. As you can see why h5 was a mistake. It does give white an extra option of ripping open the king side. g4 threatens a swap off of pawns a lot earlier than if this move hadn't been played. Obviously that's not getting played, but in this position black played king h6, and that just gives white a forced mate. Queen h5, king h8 check, king g5, F4 check, king F5, queen E5. That's exactly what was played. Well done to Yonal. He found the forced mate. Oh gosh, Nick, that was... Oh, ow. No, king G8 is fine. You're doing well here. You know, even king F8 is, I mean, it's putting it on a black square and introducing checks, but it's a heck of a lot better than what was played. King G8 and you got an easy win. King H6 and you lose to a forced mate, and brilliantly done, Yonal. Just great stuff. I love seeing this. He found the forced mate. Brilliant work. Okay, guys, I hope you all learned something from that game and you enjoyed that. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.